Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I'm sure you have said this before. I'm overwhelmed, or this is overwhelming. I can't do this. It can be a challenge for anybody. Now look at it through the eyes of somebody with ADHD, trying to manage that feeling that there's too much for me to take on. She's somebody that helps individuals, children, parents, families all the time. I don't know anybody like her. She's back. She's an ADHD coach. She's Stacey Cannon. Welcome back, Stacey.
Thank
How
you.
you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, wonderful to have you back here. It's stuff that you don't get to hear too many other places in terms of ADHD, ADD, people having chat, especially overwhelming. I can't even imagine, even based on what we talked about in the last couple of weeks, what that must feel like.
Yeah. So, of course, everybody experiences overwhelm, but the ADHD brain processes it differently than a typical brain does. And that's where a lot of us with ADHD have trouble. Basically, there's no filter, so you're taking it all in and trying to manage everything kind of in your brain, so to speak, where a typical brain might be like, okay, I'm just going to pay attention to those important things.
Is it when it's overwhelming in somebody who has ADHD, is it everything has no priority? They're all a priority.
In some ways, yes, it's like their priorities. But what do you tackle first? Or maybe if you're trying to make a decision, you're having all these thoughts going through your head, and that's keeping you from making the decision.
Right. Yeah. How do you tap the brakes on that so that you can process it?
You know, it'll take some time, but know what your triggers are, what's going to kind of send you into that overwhelm, and it could be different things. And then when you're in that, pay attention to what your body's doing. Like for me, when I'm overwhelmed, it's like here, like about here up is where I feel it all. Depending on what it is and where I am, I'll do the eye roll. I'll kind of just let out that sigh, and I just kind of feel tension. And so if you can kind of figure out what your body is starting to do, then you can find the ways that help you to step away, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. And even what you said before, like everybody's different, every situation is different. Somebody might process something differently than somebody else. But I can imagine now you have these tasks that need to get done or thoughts that you have. So now you become overwhelmed. And then even more so when some of them have immediate deadlines. We're not now, it's like, now what? Where do I go with this now?
Right. And when you've got something that's due, whether it be paperwork or an assignment or something, sometimes people can thrive in that situation because they know they have to get it done. But, there's those things that just happen in life that maybe we don't like, that just
Yeah.
an example would be, okay, so my daughter's 18 and she had her first adult experience as far as having to talk to somebody with customer service at the bank
Okay.
on the phone. And she came out to us. She's like, they hung up. They were going to put me on hold, and then it hung up, and she was just bent out of shape. And we talked about it afterwards, and she's not even ADHD, but it's like, okay, this is going to happen in life. People are going to get upset, but this is a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
I see you're flustered. Just think about that next time that happens and take a deep breath. For her, I just said that.
Sure.
But I made her aware of what we saw with her.
Flustered is a great word. Flustered, you see that right away. I think you can be flustered in individual situations and then put them all together. That's overwhelmed. My daughter is 15 and same kind of situation. She'll be a little bit in customer service or whatever. Then you get the, what do I do next? What do I do next? And a like a panic. It's like, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And I
Right.
guess it's understandable,
It is.
but that overwhelming feeling can really take over.
Mm-hmm. It can. And and it can be just something in your house. Maybe there's clutter that's, you know,
Sure.
not normally there because it's the holiday time or something. And so think about how you're feeling. Okay, what can I do to help me not get into that overwhelm mode? Okay, well, I might just take care of a couple of things with that clutter. I'm recognizing what my body's doing, taking the breath or whatever you want to do. And whatever it is that you can feel better doing, sometimes it's leaving the environment for a little bit and coming back.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I
like
mean,
it's,
whatever.
it's often been said, take a second and clear your head. That's what you're doing. Taking a
Mhm.
reset button. Let me just evaluate everything that's going on here again. These pieces need to go into place.
Yeah, but the more you're in focus with how your body is starting to feel and how you're going to react, the more you can be aware when it happens the next time. And that's where you can kind of nip it in the bud.
It's almost as if you have faith or confidence in yourself of when that's coming up again. I got it. I got it. It's all right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Have you
Ex-
noticed, like in your journeys, that it's been a lot less in terms of those moments where you feel flustered, overwhelmed?
And yes, as I've gotten older, absolutely. One, yes, I'm more aware, and just being older and wiser does help.
Mm-hmm.
But I know how to approach situations. Like one thing that's okay, it still triggers me, is when I need tech support.
Yeah.
And and anyways, but my husband's an IT guy, but I learned a long time ago to keep technology out of the marriage because he's more of like cybersecurity and stuff. He is not a fan of tech support. And
Uh,
so it's like, okay, like if I need something, I was like, this is what I've tried, but it's still happening. And I notice that I'm not as kind of annoyed with the situation.
Gotcha. Yeah. But I get the tech support thing when
Oh no.
you're on hold, and sometimes
Mhm.
it's in other countries, and communication can be challenging as well. And yeah, I get
Mhm.
it. So you're somebody that can, I guess, tap the brakes on a situation where he just doesn't want to deal with it or gets agitated early.
Yeah, and it just helps when I'm not as agitated when it comes to technology.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and and it can be so many different things. My daughter and I were in a wreck over Memorial Day weekend, and I was like the middleman trying to get all the paperwork in for the insurance companies, and that is not my thing. I'm like, well, we pay you, can't y'all just figure it out? you know?
Exactly.
But you mentioned a second ago about communication. I think a lot of that is key because one, the way you're perceived to somebody else can make whatever it is, the conversation, the situation go a lot smoother when you're in check.
And I guess sure, in a relationship when somebody has ADHD, you get to learn. I guess it's any relationship too, where who's got the strengths. Like I don't like dealing with paperwork. I'll do it. My girlfriend had a lot of returns for Amazon. I'm like, I got no problem. I pass the place on my way. I got stuff too. But that's one thing for her. It's like, oh, I got to do that. Oh, like, don't worry about it. Walk in, walk out. So I'll take that. She'll take other things.
Oh, and see, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm terrible at returning things. So that's why I have a pile of stuff that doesn't get returned. I pass it along to somebody else. But
Sure.
yeah, it really can make huge differences in relationships.
Yeah. With the communication, sure. How about any other thoughts on being flustered, being overwhelmed?
You know, if you can find ways to ease it, or ways to, if you can, the ones that are avoidable, sometimes, that can be a lot better for individuals. For example, okay, so I have two dogs. They're big dogs. They bark. One has dementia, so now he's barking a lot more. And so I don't work from home. That's kind of a trigger. I love my dogs, but the excess gets to me because I know there's nothing I can really do about it.
I could see that.
So I'm removing myself and spending more time at my office if it's something that I could do at home.
You know, that's another point, and it's kind of an age-old rule too. You can only control what you can control. So instead of marinating and just, freaking out and being angry or whatever it might be over something you can't do anything about, yeah, but it's the challenges being able to recognize it and flip the switch and then
Yeah,
just pivot the other way. And I guess that the gap in time that it takes to make that decision gets smaller as you get older and you learn these kind of things.
you do. And, if whenever you can get help, I'm terrible at making decisions because I overthink
Mm.
and overanalyze and all that. But if you have a spouse or if you have a good friend, somebody that you can just talk things over with, and, if you're a verbal processor, that is huge.
See, and some people are verbal, some people are visual. So for
Mhm.
me, I'd have to write the pros and the cons column, put it in there, and then kind of weigh it all out because it just seems clearer. I can get my arms around it doing it that way.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it's also identifying what works for you.
And it takes some time to figure out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I didn't realize some of those things till I was in my 30s and 40s.
Yep. And challenging too if you have children, especially if they're a little bit younger, then you have to explain some of these things to them. And if they have ADHD, even more challenging.
Sure. And it helps if you understand, if you're an adult who does not have ADHD, it helps to understand, let's say, your child's brain and how it works, because your response to things may be a little different because of that.
So when you're working with somebody, Stacey, are there certain areas that you I guess attack, or like does it start with a program? Like we're gonna, look at organization, we're gonna look at this, we're gonna look at that.
After I talk with them, I always ask where the individual or the family is impacted the most with ADHD. And that's where we start. Because that's usually where you have, what I say, the low hanging fruit that you can kind of tackle, and they might be able to see some early progress.
Hmm. That's the challenge, tracking the progress. You got to wait till
Mhm.
another situation comes up in terms of being overwhelmed.
You know, a lot of times I will talk things through and they'll practice some things a different way. And so they'll come back to me and let me know how it went. And then, if there was a hiccup, we'll talk about that.
Hmm.
But ultimately, over time, the goal is to coach somebody out of needing to be coached because they're going to learn these skills and what works for them. And they're going to be the ones who are practicing in between the sessions.
Yep, totally. And that, like even I said before, I personally have to write things down. Somebody said, "Why don't you write it down?" I never even thought of that.
I know half these things, it's like to the average person, it's like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. But if you have ADHD, when you dive into things, it's like, oh, you might dive into a to-do list more than, oh, just writing down what you need to do. And then it's just, yeah, it's like that light bulb. It's like, oh, this can really work when I do it this way.
Yep. Well, even with you as a coach and your experience, having been diagnosed earlier than having a child with ADHD, you see it from both sides.
Mhm.
And I mean, even the progression of, medications over the years, you've seen and heard what works, because it's on your radar,
Absolutely.
something that
It is. It is. And if
Hmm.
that's what somebody needs is medication, a lot, it can help for certain individuals, and that really can make a difference. It's not the
Yeah.
number one answer, but it's certainly something that can really help somebody.
Well, with your experience, pick one. Let's say somebody is trying one medication, you may have the name of another one that somebody didn't even think of. Oh, I didn't even hear of that one, because you're plugged into it.
Yeah, and usually when it comes to medication, I'll have them talk to their doctor.
Hmm.
But I'll say, if one doesn't work, you can always talk to your doctor and try another one, because there's a lot that is out there for people.
Do you work with a lot of parents?
Yeah, I do. And a lot of it ends up being, I don't want to say parent training, but education,
Hmm.
because, the more we work together, the more they have questions, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't think about this situation. And then we'll talk about that. But yeah, and a lot of times the parents are just relieved to know they're not the only ones out there
Yeah.
who are experiencing that. And, I have parents who even ask me, you know, if I had experienced, something when my kids were little. I was like, oh yeah, I was that parent. My kid had the meltdown when we
Hmm.
were out shopping and everybody was looking at me and I just wanted to cry.
It's not easy finding other parents with children that have ADHD.
Right. And,
You know?
yeah, and a lot of times they question how they parent. And, I'm
Mm.
there to reassure them. I said, this is not you. What works for one may not work for your child with ADHD. It does not mean you're a bad parent. We just have to look at, some other ways, that, we can help you find a solution,
Right.
so there's not so much disarray when you're trying to help your child and so forth.
I can totally see that, like, especially with the holidays. That must be even more challenging.
Yeah, because there's less structure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you when you talk about structure, like in your home and with a focus also on your daughter that has ADHD, is there structure? Like I personally think everybody should have some kind of structure.
There is when school is in session. And then in the summertime, she's either at camp or at work. So there's kind of built-in structure that
Mhm.
way. But I probably, when they were younger, I wish I had a little bit more structure. It was certainly not a free for all, but we were home a lot during the short stint that I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And it was hard. We'd get up and have breakfast, that kind of thing, but just trying to find activities when, at the time we didn't have a lot of money to go somewhere every day. And so that was, I think the hard part for me was the being at home.
Mm. And if you've got you're frustrated trying to figure out what are we going to do? How do I keep them happy? All of that, they're picking up on that energy too.
Absolutely,
Uh,
100%.
hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicate.
Yeah.
So do you have your week structured out too? Is it certain days we do this, certain days we do that?
I don't now that the kids are older, but if we need to go do something that's probably more than an hour away, I'll put it on the calendar. And my calendar is on our fridge.
Okay.
And
Okay. So visual.
there you go. And I write, there's a spot below where it's an empty weekly spot where I write what we're having for dinner. So I don't get all the phone calls during the day when they're supposed to be, well, they are in class, but not supposed to be using their phone,
Right.
and so forth. But they use it to kind of plan themselves. If they know I'm going to be working late, well, they know they can go grab themselves some dinner. And it doesn't have to be a big discussion.
Well, I love the here's what we're having for dinner this week. Just take a screenshot, or take a photo of it, and then you have it.
Yeah.
And then it takes pressure off for you, and you got a plan anyway. So
Right.
now you have, Tuesday's this, Wednesday it's fast food, whatever it might be, Thursday, whatever.
Yeah, and doctor's appointments, well, you know what? They can, ask off for work because they're looking at the calendar.
Right. Yeah. Well, it helps you plan. I mean, meal plan and all of that.
It does. Yeah.
So if somebody wants to connect with you and, unpack a lot of this stuff, if they're dealing with being overwhelmed, if they or a member of their family or both have ADHD, starts with just a conversation with you?
It does. We can schedule a free discovery call. You can, email me, and that's hillcountryadhd@gmail.com. Or you can go to my website, hillcountryadhd.com. And then I'm also on Instagram at Stacey Cannon Coaches. So there's different ways you can just reach out to me, and I can get back with you.
Yeah, I love it. There's, some coaching programs out there where, it's the A plan, the B plan, the C plan. That doesn't work here because every individual, every family, every situation, it's always going to be different. And that's what's great about you. You personalize and tailorize everything for that one person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One size doesn't fit all in a situation.
Exactly.
And plus, the other part is you have a passion for helping people too. So that's the great part. So hillcountryadhd.com.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. What's for dinner tonight?
Leftovers from last night. The Olive Garden soup with the sausage and potatoes.
Oh, that sounds great.
That recipe.
Wait, you have a knockoff recipe? Oh, good for you. I just got one. I love Starbucks egg bites. I don't cook, by the way. This is a big endeavor. And I found a copycat recipe. I'm going to try that. Yeah. But
there you go.
It's all about the planning because now we don't have to worry about breakfast for a couple of days out of the week.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, love it.
All right, Stacey, great talking with you, and I'll look forward next time we get together.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.